oftentimes when people think of grief, they think of loss. Like they associate grief with loss. But grief comes in a lot of other forms, including mental health and addiction. And so I wanted to talk to you because in your case, you were a small business owner. I understand that you've got a successful daycare.
That's correct.
And as well as a mom, you're a sister, you're a daughter. But in your own words, you felt like you were sinking. Tell me about that.
Well, I mean, alcohol is an addictive substance. And the crux of it is the more jobs you give it, sort of quote unquote, the better chance you have of becoming addicted to it. So if it is used to relieve your stress, after a hard day, you come home and you have a drink. You use it when you're happy. You use it when you're sad. Anytime there's an excuse, the more jobs you give it, the more chances are you're going to become dependent on it. And I was sliding into that hole and did not like it at all.
And for you, when did the addiction to alcohol begin? Was there anything that triggered it? Or is it something that happened over time where you went from social drinker to drinking excessively?
I mean, we all start out as a social drinker. We can all remember our first taste of alcohol and our body just goes, whoa, what is that? Late teens when you're gathering with friends and you have that concoction of whatever it is that you've gathered from your parents' basement. And it just sort of progressed. But I found in the last 10 years, I was drinking to excess and I did not like it. So It was just a very slow progression. It went from being socially acceptable to something that I just knew was not right.
Okay, well, it was on November 6, 2017 that you began what you called your sober journey.
Correct.
Now, people might be watching this now who are battling alcoholism. And so can you talk about your sober journey and what exactly you did?
Oh, I would love to. So I was actually browsing around Facebook, surprise, surprise, one morning really hungover, and I was on a group, I don't even recall what group it was, and this book kept coming up, This Naked Mind by Annie Grace, and it was just, everyone kept recommending it. And I thought, well, you know what, I'll give it a try. Called my local bookstore, love promoting local. They hadn't even heard of it. So I ordered it through Amazon, it came on, and then there's also a free alcohol experiment where basically you just stop drinking for 30 days, and that's the gist of it. And once 30 days is up, you decide for yourself whether you feel better and you want to continue or whether you want to, go back to drinking, however you want to approach after the 30 days. And I felt so incredible after the 30 days that I knew I was not going to drink ever.
Really? And how hard was that 30 days for you?
The first week was really tricky, and it's more mental. The first couple of days, it takes about 72 hours for alcohol to get out of your system. Once it's out, then it's just the mental, it's the subconscious part of your mind and the neural pathways that are used to reaching for a drink. I've come home from a hard day's work, I'm cooking dinner, I need my beer. It's sunny outside on a Sunday, I'm washing my car, where's my beer? Anything, you go out with friends to a bar, you go to a wedding, you go to a funeral, anything that you attend has alcohol in it. So getting through that was tricky. But with the proper plans in place and tactics, it became a breeze. And It's now been over 3 years, and I consider myself now just a non-drinker.
On August 3rd, 2020, you reached a milestone that day. You hit 1,000 days sober.
Yes.
And you wrote on Facebook, you said, 1,000 days later, and I can't imagine ever drinking again. How was that day for you? How was that day hitting 1,000 days sober?
It was amazing. I had actually stopped counting days, but I still have the little tracker on my phone.
Okay.
And when I hit, I knew I was approaching my 3-year mark. So I knew 1,000 days was going to come up. So I started to pay attention to it. And to see those 4 digits, like when I first saw 2 days, I was excited. When I saw 14, when I hit double digits, I was excited. Hit 100 days, it was like, wow, I cannot believe I've done this. When I hit 1,000 days, it was almost like a relief, like I'm here. There is no going back. It is true that alcohol is small and irrelevant. And I have the power now to help others that are questioning their drinking or, however it goes. But I loved seeing those 4 digits. It was very powerful.
Awesome. That's awesome. Well, you were so inspired by becoming alcohol-free that you decided to make it a life's passion to help others overcome their own alcohol addiction. I understand that you became a certified coach for This Naked Mind because not only did they write a book, but there's also a website. And there's courses and there's podcasts and everything available there. So you became a certified coach there, as well as another entity called Forward Freedom. What led you down that path? What made you decide that you wanted to go this route and become a coach and help others?
When I saw the difference in myself and what I was able to overcome the stigma, as you mentioned earlier, the stigma is just huge around having any kind of an alcohol use disorder. I wanted to show people that you don't have to hit rock bottom, and it's a disorder because you're consuming an addictive substance. We don't question anything else. Everything else, as far as drugs are concerned, is not socially acceptable. There are not cocaine bars, for example. You can't go to a bar and, cozy up and say, I'd like a line of cocaine, please. But you can go up and order 3 double scotches and nobody blinks an eye at you. So I want to try and break the stigma and say, you know what, it's okay if you're concerned with what you're doing. Sit down with me, let's work through this, and I can show you the freedom.
So we're doing this in November of 2020. As you mentioned, you're 3 years sober now. And, as they say, life throws curveballs at you sometimes. And so in your situation, you sent me an email and you told me that you lost someone close to you this past summer, and then a couple of months later, you lost your dad. Do you mind talking about them and telling me what happened?
No, not at all. It was my girlfriend who passed away suddenly in June. One of my dearest friends, sadly, she was having some internal medical issues that she was getting taken care of by a doctor, doing all the right things. But an acquaintance of hers said, oh, you know what, you've got pain. I've got some pills for you. Let me give you some pills. That will ease your pain. Unbeknownst to anyone, they were laced with fentanyl and it killed her.
You're kidding me.
Yeah.
That is unbelievable.
I still get chills and tears when I think about it.
Yeah, that is unbelievable.
She left behind a 13-year-old son and a partner of many years. They've since been charged with manslaughter.
Really?
Yeah. When you're dealing with alcohol and you get hit with news like that, it hit me at 10:30 in the morning. I mean, that's when I found out. Mm-hmm. We call it our subconscious brain. All of a sudden kicked in and said, Pam, you need a beer. Right. And I kind of went, where did that thought come from? Like, it's 10:30 in the morning. I have my daycare's going. I'm not going to have a beer. So I was able to get rid of that thought. But it got me thinking, that this will come up with myself and with others.
Sure. Now, in case of your dad, because I understand your dad passed shortly after your friend, I looked up your dad. You want to talk about a life?
Yeah.
Your dad, 94 years old, a World War II veteran. He was a musician. And so it sounds like he lived a pretty full life. Because you told me when you wrote me that email about the grief that you were dealing with. Hopefully you found solace in the fact that 94 is solid. I only hope I'm so lucky,
Oh, definitely. At 94, with the life that he lived, I love the fact that I was able to spend that many years with him. And also the fact it wasn't up until the last couple of days that his health took a total downward spiral.
Really? He was good up
until the end, he was good.
Really?
He was able to pass at home. He was happy. He was content. Myself, my son Bradley, my brother, and my mom were there. So, I mean, it was just, you couldn't ask for anything more rewarding in the sense of contentment and love in the air,
Right.
Around that.
Well, in the email that you sent me, you said you had never dealt with such grief in a short period of time. Of course, you had COVID-19 on top of it all.
Yes.
You said you wanted to share your experience with others to show them how to survive grief sober. And to me, that was a key term. You said you want to show others how to survive grief sober.
Yeah.
I think you've already kind of explained it, but how did you do it? Like you said, your dad was going to haunt you if you did. But with everything, because I'm sure your daycare probably took a hit with COVID too. So how did you manage to overcome all of that grief over a short period of time and not turn to the bottle?
Because I'm a non-drinker.
Awesome.
And that's what it boils down to. I was able to use the tools that I now share with others and reuse them on myself. Even though I was a non-drinker, I still had a couple of those thoughts. Because you get hit with such grief and such devastation so quickly. Again, as you know, it's difficult to cope. But I used the tools that I had, and I really stood my ground and stood strong. And then in looking at it, I realized that grief is very similar to grief covers many things in life, and basically loss. But when you give up alcohol, especially if you are a heavy drinker or have an alcohol use disorder, you're giving up your best friend. So you grieve that process, and you go through many of the stages that you do as if you're grieving a loved one.
Right.
So what I'm doing is designing a program to help people that are going through any type of grief, including grieving the loss of alcohol, to keep you strong and not have you sort of fall back and drink.